Welcome to Brick by Brick. Join me, Loren, Wernette, as I share my personal journey of building a thriving real estate and hard money lending business from the ground up. Along the way, we'll explore the strategies, challenges, and breakthroughs that come with growing wealth. Whether you're a seasoned investor or aspiring entrepreneur, or simply curious about the world of private lending and real estate, this podcast is packed with actionable insights, real-world stories, and mindset tips to help you build your own path to success brick by brick. Welcome to another episode of Brick by Brick. Today we have an awesome guest, Mikkel Thorup, who is going to talk to us all about investing internationally. So as a lot of you know, I am heavily involved in investing specifically in the southeast of the United States with my debt fund and upcoming equity fund. So I'm excited to talk to Mikkel about how investors can get involved in international investing, what that looks like, and how he got started in that. So Mikkel, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Loren. Happy to be here and happy to share with your audience, and very cool program you have here. So should be a good conversation today.
So can you give us a little bit of background about how you got into what you're currently doing? And your current business is Expat Money. So how you got into that and what you were doing prior to that and kind of how it evolved into this business.
Sure. For my backstory, I have to go quite far back in time, but I promise it will make sense and I will tie it together. So what happened, Loren, was when I was a child, I was actually diagnosed with a learning disability. And one day, the teacher pulled me out of class and sat me down in a little room, and the principal and vice principal and resource teacher were there. And they said, Mikkel, something doesn't work quite right in your brain. What we want to do is send you to a special school for special boys. And that's what they did. Every day for 3 years, I got on a little white bus and I took a little white bus across town and I went to this quote unquote special school. Only problem was it was actually not a special school. It was a regular school with a special class. So you can probably imagine what happened. I got picked on and I got bullied and I got in a ton of fights. Now, this is no woe is me, poor Mikkel, victim type of story. Certainly not. I mean, I got hit. I hit back twice as hard if I could. I would never claim otherwise. But overall, pretty terrible experience. After 3 years, I got to go back to my neighborhood school, and I thought, this is going to be amazing. All my friends will have missed me, and everyone's going to be wondering what happened, and they're going to be so happy to see me. But day one of school, you can probably imagine, again, what happened. Everybody starts gossiping and whispering. And I remember Mikkel, he went to some retard school. Thanks, guys. Very sensitive. You know how children are, very politically correct and very sensitive souls. But what it did was leave a very bad taste in my mouth for public education. So I stopped going. And when I stopped going, I started failing. Basically, at 12 years old, I stopped going to school. And at 15, I officially dropped out. And when I dropped out, I had an opportunity not shortly after to travel and go international. And I started meeting all these incredible people who were learning things and doing things completely different than I had ever seen where I grew up in southwestern Ontario. And immediately I realized this is who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. These were my people, and I want to travel and explore the world. And, nobody knows my horrible, dark secret of a learning disability, which is dyslexia, which we kind of know in 2025 is not really a big deal whatsoever. But 1980s, it was like a criminal offense. And, it was really, a terrible thing. But fast forward to today, and I've done exactly that. I've dedicated my life to exploring the world and traveling. I've lived in 9 different countries. I've visited about 120 countries. I've circumnavigated the globe over 400 times. And I own real estate in 10 different countries. My wife and I have 4 beautiful children. They're all born in different countries. I've built my entire life, my business, my hobbies, my friends. Everything is very, very international. And now I coach and help people on going offshore and moving their assets offshore and investing offshore and doing the immigration and all of these types of things. And I still really love it, even after 25 years straight of doing this. I'm still super passionate. I'm still super passionate to talk to you about it today. So, a non-traditional background, let's say, but a very fun and interesting path to get here, let's say.
So, what was that opportunity at 15 that lets you go international? And then help me bridge the gap between I'm a 15-year-old going to visit another country to I'm starting a company that helps with tax mitigation and investments for international companies.
Yeah, sure. So I dropped out when I was 15. I had to save a bit of money. I mean, I was working in whatever random jobs that I could to save up money. At 17, I left. I mean, the first 5, 6, 7 years was just traveling, saving money, traveling. I lived out in the ski resorts in Western Canada. I hitchhiked and backpacked through Central and South America. I was in North Africa for 2 months when I was 19. Anything that I could do to be able to save money. Eventually, I got really into personal finance and investing and things like this. I tried the stock market. I traded derivatives and options for probably around 7 years, 8 years. And I made a lot of money and I lost a lot of money. I mean, it was, very, very up and down, which was fine for a single guy. But eventually, I wanted to try entrepreneurship and build something and create something. And so that's what I did. I took what I was very passionate about, which was investing and personal finance and things like that. And I sandwiched it with what I knew very, very well, which was traveling and living overseas. And that's when I created Expat Money. And we started with the podcast. I mean, I was doing a bit of consulting on the side for a couple of years before that. But the brand we started about just under 10 years ago. And, you can still go back and listen to old episodes of the podcast, which are kind of funny and maybe a little bit embarrassing on the quality. Things got better, and now over the last decade, a very substantial audience, and we get several million people a year who read and listen to my work about these. But it's kind of broken into three sections. Let's say section one or phase one was just getting experience and traveling and having fun and being a young man, and then phase two was just learning about finance and money and how the world works. And then phase three was really building the business and putting it all together. And they're pretty equal parts, let's say. But as I get older, the last part keeps growing and growing. The other parts don't seem to be growing.
So, did that consulting at the beginning, did that just start with you were already doing it and then you met somebody that's like, hey, I like what you're doing. How do I do that? Or did you identify it as a need and go out and market?
No, it was very interested in this. So, I mean, I was doing any type of business consulting or helping people because I saw what they were doing. But I wanted to be a consultant. I wanted to talk for a living and give advice for a living and help people. Like right now, I don't have to keep working, Lauren. Like I am independently wealthy at this point, and I keep working because it's fun and I enjoy it. And I'm not gonna go and play golf all day. I mean, I need to stay busy. So I've got a larger team, but no, it was very purposeful even from the very beginning.
Got it. So, talk to me a little bit about like who are your clients and how you're currently helping them, like what situations they get themselves in or they're in that they need your help and how you provide value to them.
Sure. So the majority of my clients are gonna fall into one of two buckets. There's the let's call it highly paid professionals. So the majority of my clients are going to be lawyers, accountants, doctors, wealth managers, people like this, highly paid professional that bill at very high amounts. Okay. Um, I'd say it's probably about 50%. The other 50% is small business owners, usually in the brick and mortar space. So I've got a lot of general contractors. I've got a fencing guy. I have a guy who does stairs. I have three guys who do roofing. Two are commercial and one's residential. All of these types of things. They've got, 30, 40, 50 staff underneath them. They're CEO of their company they've built up over the last 25 years. And they want to, protect their downside. That's really a lot of what it is we play a lot in the defense space. So, of those people, let's call it another half will move overseas. They'll actually, pick up and leave. But half of them just don't like the direction of the world and just want to have a piece of real estate overseas and maybe another residency and a bank account and, just be protected in case they have to leave. So it's kind of, we call it a plan B in my space or an economic plan B. And You'd be surprised at some of the people, like, it wouldn't be at first glance, like, these are not radical people. These are, actually very normal, down to earth, pragmatic, productive members of society, but don't like the way they've been treated over the last several years and really see the need of having something offshore that is going to protect them. And oh, by the way, it does make good financial sense and there is good money on the back end. And oh, by the way, it is fun and interesting and people want a bit of adventure and they like to travel and explore new places. So it's not really a place of fear that we're trying to go through things. I mean, I'm very much optimistic and very happy and fun loving. Like, I love my work. I love working with my clients and I try to reframe things. I'm not a doom and gloom type of person, even though I do recognize there is a lot of darkness in the world.
So it's a plan for the worst, but expect the best kind of mentality.
Definitely a plan for the worst. I'm not sure that people are expecting the best. I mean, I think that a lot of people recognize that the best is, you know, 30 years ago, 50 years ago in like certain parts of the world. Let's say, like, I'm from Canada. I mean, Canada's best years are absolutely behind us. I mean, the country is an absolute mess right now. The government has basically a war on productive members of society. And, there is a huge wealth migration out of the country, absolutely massive. Like, I have some tax firms that I work with, and they give me the numbers of the people that are moving overseas. It's it's truly crazy. The only way that they're able to cover this up is by bringing in, new people to the countries. But birth rates are falling, money is leaving, skilled members, who have all the experience. We're talking once again, the doctors and the lawyers, the senior people, they're all leaving or they're retiring because, the liability is too much. It's just not even worth participating anymore.
Are you seeing similar trends with your customers in the US, or are you focused primarily with Canadian customers?
No, I mean, my business is a lot of Canadians, but a lot of Americans as well. I'd say split 50-50. The funny thing is that the US population wise is about 10 times the size of Canada. So in relation, the Canadian is, it's a much higher percentage of people going overseas. But still the US as well, they still recognize that they need to protect their downside very much. And the US is an extremely litigious country. So, if you're an obstetrician or something like that. It's not a question of, if you will be sued. It's like when you're going to be sued, or how many times or for how much, so people really recognize that they need to protect themselves and they, just crossing their fingers and hoping is not a strategy.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a rite of passage for a business owner. Like, oh, you haven't even been sued yet? Are you even in business?
Hmm.
It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when and whether you're protected enough or not, right?
Absolutely.
So, talk to me about what type of things your customers or even you are investing in overseas, and where are some of the regions or areas that you really see opportunity at for an investor that, like you said, a doctor or a lawyer that's got a lot of money and looking to, place some money overseas.
Yeah, I mean, first thing to understand is I'm very much a tangible assets kind of guy. I like real estate. I like, farmland and agriculture and timber. I like gold and silver. I don't like, random tech companies that I can't understand and I have no idea what's on their balance sheet. And, it's a pie in the sky kind of metric and the company's never been profitable. Like, I like things I can touch and smell and feel and taste. Most of my clients do as well because they're also very down to earth. The countries we're investing in are mostly in Latin America. So, there are absolute bastions of freedom, enclaves down here that are respecting freedom. Like we have, I mean, everybody's, talking around the world about Argentina and Javier Milei, or in El Salvador of Bukele, but there's actually a lot of other places that people maybe don't get the headlines. But like we can think of Raul Molino here in Panama. I'm based out of Panama City, Panama, which is a pro-business, right-leaning government where, there's a very tax favorable country that they're doing some amazing things here. We can look at a country like Paraguay with Santiago Peña, the president of Paraguay, who's also pro-business, right-leaning, amazing man. He's just only a couple of years older than I am. I've had an opportunity to sit down with him a couple of times and talk directly to him about immigration and foreign direct investment into Paraguay. We even just got back from Paraguay about a week and a half ago, and I had about 50 people with me, 45 investors plus my partners there. And these are all Americans and Canadians who want to move money overseas and want to have a second residency. And they're looking at apartments and raw land and single family homes and different things like this down there. And they're very serious. I mean, these people are extremely, extremely serious. So I took them down for 8 days, and we got them a residency there, and we showed them a couple of different cities, and we had amazing food. And Paraguay is an excellent opportunity that I am able to help clients with. We're looking at a number of countries in Central and South America, but this is kind of the direction, so you understand what we focus on.
Got it. So a lot of stuff in South America. Is there a specific reason why that area? Is it just the political climate that makes it so conducive to investing? Is there some benefit because of time zones, or is there a reason why you're not looking at Africa or Asia or some of these other places that you hear a lot for how fast they're growing population wise?
So we definitely have a criteria of what we're after. We're very much a freedom-minded community. So I want to be in a food, water, and energy independent country. Basically, I want to be able to produce our own food so we can feed ourselves. We want lots of fresh water, and we want to have a lot of either electricity or hydrocarbons. Okay. Now, most places in Central and South America are already going to tick that box. Take a country like, Uruguay or Paraguay or Brazil or Argentina. I mean, these are absolute powerhouses in all of these types of things. Paraguay has the Itapu Dam, which produces 90% of the electricity, as well as 17% of the electricity for the country of Brazil. It's hydroelectric. It goes forever. It's been running for 40 years. It's the largest hydroelectric dam in the world. You know, Look at a country like Uruguay, population 4 million people. They feed 40 million people a year. I mean, because they export so much food. These countries are over massive water tables and aquifers. Okay. That is very attractive to me. I used to live in the Middle East. I lived in Abu Dhabi and Dubai for almost a decade. And that's not the case. I mean, they have hydrocarbons, great, but they don't have fresh water. They don't grow anything. So that's pretty problematic. And then they're in a contentious area where their neighbors they don't really get along with in some of the instances. I mean, the GCC is not so bad, but if you go a little bit further, across the Arabian Gulf or the Persian Gulf, I mean, not so much there. Or you look at the problems in Syria, and I mean, it's not, or even Yemen right next door, not very safe there. But Central and South America, everybody gets along. The biggest thing down here is who's going to win the football match. Like no one, there's no they're not worried about troops or bullets or anything like that. It's footy. That's what they care about. So, and then if you consider all of the problems that's happening between Ukraine and Russia, we're very far away from that, like extremely far away, another hemisphere. So I think that all makes sense. And then once again, when you add that it is the same time zone, as you rightly pointed out, in most cases, you're looking at Central Time or Eastern Standard Time, and you have organic food and lots of fresh fish. Like I live in Panama, so we've got the Atlantic, we got the Caribbean, as well as the Pacific right there. I'm looking out, I can look out my window and I can see the Pacific Ocean from my home. I mean, that's fantastic. We've got mountains here. We have fantastic medical facilities. I mean, there's just so many good things down here in Latin America. Now, are there bad places in Latin America? Are there unsafe places in Latin America? Absolutely. Of course there are. I just don't go there. I'm not participating in areas like that. I'm participating in the safe, stable, politically, pro-business types of places. I'm not going to hardcore, socialist countries or places with lots of gangs or, cartels or anything like that. It doesn't have anything to do with me, right? So once again, it's the enclaves, it's the smaller areas that we're cherry picking out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense, and specifically the political piece, because I've heard a lot of talk for some of my circles recently about investing in Africa, and my biggest qualm there, and I am by no means an expert in any of this. I stick very, very closely to Southeast U.S. investing, but like the political turmoil in those countries, like one day that your assets could just be taken from you, that's terrifying for someone that's kind of very novice to it, right? And so that makes sense, especially the water and the food piece. So you got to have those securities because water is going to be the new oil in 30, 40 years on the way we're going.
Yeah, with Africa, I mean, It's not that I don't think that there are opportunities in Africa. I just think that it is so radically different than our cultures and what, a North American would understand or have exposure to, that I think it's gonna be difficult. It's not that I don't think there's opportunities, I think there is, but I just don't know that, I'm prepared enough or my clients are prepared enough. Where you compare that to Latin America, and a lot of people, took Spanish in school, they listen to Spanish music or Puerto Rican music or something like that, and reggaeton. They understand the food. They've been down to Mexico on holidays. It's at least familiar to them. Now, I love Africa. I've been to South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe. I've been to Kenya and Uganda, and I've been to Nigeria multiple times. I mean, I've traveled pretty extensively in Africa and had a good experience
Hmm.
there. But I do think that it is more difficult in a place like that. And as for Asia, I've traveled really like a ton in Asia. And I have a ton of experience in Asia. My wife is from mainland China. I've traveled to, I think, every country in Southeast Asia and every country in East Asia. I've been to, Korea and Japan and China, combined probably 70 or 80 times during my life. So a lot of experience in those countries. Now, first of all, the culture is very, very different for a lot of people. There are also a lot of people over there. I like to be in a little bit less dense places, especially, with what we've seen over the last couple of years. I want to have a little bit more room. Like we considered moving to Hong Kong, we considered moving to some other places. And I was like, there's not enough room for me there. I mean, you'd live in the size of a closet and pay a fortune for it. Where here in Panama, you can have like a beautiful big home and it's very, very low cost of living. So I think Asia, once again, there can be opportunities, but it's not so popular with the majority of my clients. I think it's more people are more comfortable going north south, let's say, opposed to east west.
Yeah, so I just recently finished reading one of Ray Dalio's books, and I was I've never traveled to Asia. I was just reading some of the cultural differences between Western versus Eastern culture. And in my mind, I'm like, I think that would be very challenging to kind of learn. And that learning curve would be very steep to go from how we're normally used to doing business to how it sounds like they want to do business. Not unsurpassable, but definitely makes it more of a challenge than moving to a Spanish speaking country where the culture is a bit more similar.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, it's once again, it's not that you can't do it, it's how much time and energy and effort you have to put into doing it and how many mistakes do you need to go through. Like, I've been married to my wife for 10 years. I mean, we speak Mandarin and I don't speak Mandarin, but my kids speak Mandarin with my wife. And, her parents are here 6 months of the year. And like I said, I've been to Asia, almost every country. And I still feel like, I'm not going to have a huge competitive advantage. And that's a 20 some odd year career going back and forth in Asia. So, but I do think here in Latin America, I can have a huge advantage and really get ahead in these countries.
Yeah, makes sense. So, for most of what we're talking about, are we talking about investors that are just moving money across borders? Or are we talking about the majority of customers moving money and maybe themselves for a good portion of the year? And maybe it's a mixture, but where do you see the kind of that split being on your investors, and which do you recommend?
So, as I said before, it's about half half. Half are going to stay in the US and just have a plan B, and the other half are absolutely going to move themselves, their money, everything they have offshore. And I'd say it really is like a 50-50 type of split. So I'm able to help both people, both groups of people, let's say.
Got it. And so, for somebody that is looking to move themselves for a vast majority of the year, or maybe all of the year, to another country. So, we're looking at South America, obviously, because of the cultural similarities there. We're looking at right leaning countries that have water and food. What are some other things that are really you need to consider as an investor that's trying to make that decision to move? Because I can't imagine it's like I'm going to sell my house in New Jersey or wherever and just move to Panama and that's that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't encourage people just to sell everything and move. There's a lot of steps that need to be taken first. I mean, what we're trying to do is create a plan together. So I work as a consultant. So my main area, let's say, is working one on one with families. So it is an entire plan for the parents, possibly, the grandparents, the kids, where are they going to go to school, all of these types of things. we have to get them their immigration. Usually to get immigration, a permanent residency somewhere else, they have to invest in the country. So maybe they have to buy a piece of real estate and we can get their permanent residency on the back end. We need to set up their bank accounts. If we're going to hold the real estate, outside of their own name, okay, what kind of structures are we using? An LLC, an SA, an IBC, a trust, a foundation, what does that look like, right? Okay. And then it's all of the obligations back to your home government. Because if you own assets overseas, there's most likely going to be some filing requirements for you. So, we need to make sure that if you're a US tax person, you're filing correctly, you're paying your taxes on your worldwide income. That's part of the fun of being an American is no matter where you live in the world, they're going to want a bite of your apple. So, we have to be compliant with all those things. But then we also have to be compliant in the new country that we're moving to. So, all their tax laws and obligations. And then if we're structuring the company that holds the asset in a third jurisdiction, we need to follow those rules and laws as well. So, there's multiple layers here. So, I kind of work with the client on designing the plan, then building out the team of the lawyers and everybody that we would need for the plan to come true. And then I'm with you every step of the way to make sure all the filing is done and all the applications are done and everything. So it's, a 12-month process when I take someone offshore. Even when I work with someone, even if it takes more than 12 months, I'm still there for the client. But usually, we're signing a 12-month contract. It's going to take us 6 to 12 months to get everything done.
Got it. That makes sense. So going back to the taxes piece. So basically you're saying that if I'm an American citizen and I move to someplace else, not only do I have to pay taxes, income taxes there, but I've also got to continue to pay United States income taxes. Is that true for every country? Because I thought I heard at one point years ago that there was like 2 countries in the world that you did not have to pay US taxes if you moved to.
No. So the way it works is that most countries are going to tax based on either physical presence or your residency. So, say Canada, for example, it's going to tax on Canadian sourced income. And if you're a tax resident there, if you're spending a certain amount of time or you're deemed as you're considered a tax resident. But Canadians can leave the country, file their final tax return, do a deemed disposition, which is basically an imaginary sale of everything they own, pay a capital gains tax on it, and then leave. And now they never have a tax obligation back to the Canadian government again, except Canadian real estate or Canadian sourced income. But an American can leave, never go back to the US. You can be gone for 20 years, 30 years, 100 years, and you still owe taxes back to the US every single year because the US tax is based on citizenship, not just residency, not just physical presence. Okay. So there's 2 countries in the world that tax based on worldwide income on citizenship. It's Eritrea, which is a small African nation in the northeast of Africa, which is known for blatant human rights violations, and the United States. So I will let you come to your own conclusion on the merit of taxing people this way. Now, that's not to say that there are not programs that we can use to legally reduce your taxes. There are some, and we can, you can go on the IRS website and find out about them, and we can talk about them a bit if you want. But as a US tax person, you have a legal obligation for filing and paying taxes on your worldwide income, no matter what, no matter how you structure it, no matter where you live. Uncle Sam will always reach into your pocket and they'll always want to take their piece. There's no real way around that, let's say.
Got it. Got it. So let's talk about some of the benefits from a lifestyle standpoint of moving yourself and your assets to another country, investing in another country. So you have 4 children. I have 4 children as well, and wanting to expose them to as much as possible. Talk to me about what that looks like for you, for your investors, and some of the real big upsides you see in making these large lifestyle moves.
Sure. I mean, we can use myself as an example in this. So we're very fortunate. Here in Latin America, the cost of living is drastically less. So, for example, my wife is a stay-at-home mom. We homeschool our children. My wife doesn't need to work. She'll never have a job, an employment again. I mean, she's very busy with the children, of course, but she doesn't need to go and do a 9 to 5 ever again. We also have domestic help. So we have 2 full-time nannies. One is live in, one is live out. We also have a full-time chef who works for us. The guy's been a chef for 18 years. He's traveled and cooked in Italy and Ireland and all over Europe and the US and things like that. Amazing chef. and he works full time for our family. So he does all the menu planning, the grocery shopping. He puts away the food, he rotates the food, he cooks the food, he cleans up, he prepares everything for our family. I actually had a conversation with my wife last night that, we're starting to have the conversation about maybe having a fifth child. Well, if we have a fifth child, then she wants a little bit more help. No problem. But we don't need another nanny. But what we could really use is a full time cleaning lady. So, bringing in a cleaning lady because we have quite a large house, and then keep the house clean. So my wife can focus on the education for the kids. The nannies can watch over their safety for the younger ones. The chef does all the cooking. And now we have a cleaning lady that keeps the home clean. And, I work from home. So I'm very fortunate that I don't have to be out of the office. I don't do a 1 hour commute. I do about a 1 meter commute, and I work from home. So I'm with my family every day. But if I was in Toronto, or if I was in LA or New York or Vancouver or something, there's no way I could do all these types of things. Even being a well to do family, I mean, you just wouldn't have a lifestyle like this. And I think that there's absolutely something to be said for having a lot of help. I think it's, having a kids is a lot of work, especially if you want to do it right and you want to make sure that they get the attention and you don't have all the stress and the anxiety, and fights and any of these types of things. I don't live in a stressful environment. I live in a very calm environment, and the kids are, you know, they don't feel stress and anxiety because we've always got adults around to help, and there's no one's, at the tail end of a 14-hour day and haven't slept and the house is a mess and you're pulling your hair out and then you snap at the kids or something. That doesn't exist for us down here because of all these types of things that we're talking about. Make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, I do you feel comfortable sharing kind of what some of the costs for that would be compared to what it would be, you know, in North Carolina or the States or Canada?
Sure. I mean, I can't comment on how much it will be in back home because I've been gone for many, many years, but I'll tell you, what the standard rates are down here, and then you guys kind of compare yourself. So if you're looking at a live-in nanny, you're looking at probably 400 US to maybe 550, 600 US a month for 5 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day. you know, so somewhere around 100 to $150 a week for a live-in. If you're gonna have a live out, you can probably add an extra $100 on because they need to have rent themselves, and they'll usually share with a family member or a friend or something like that, and they'll live, an hour outside of the city, so in much more affordable places. Similar type of prices if you're gonna have a gardener, probably like 500-600 bucks a month. We have a house, but the yard's not big enough to have a gardener, so we don't need that. What's also very popular is to have a driver. So if you have lots of kids, you'll have probably lots of activities. They'll play soccer, or they'll do martial arts, or there's swimming lessons, or ballet, or gymnastics, and it's kind of all over the city. So it's very common to have a full-time driver. Usually you will own the vehicle, and then they will just drive you around or drive the kids around all day. And maybe, you know, if you're gonna have an English speaking driver, probably $1,000 a month, I would say, at the very top end, but could probably do for maybe $800 a month. If you have a child who has a disability, or you have a family member, an elderly family member who needs medical attention, you can have a registered nurse work in your house for about $1,250 a month. And you'll get a very good person like that. It's very common when a new mother has a baby that they'll have a special type of nanny that will come in and will sleep with the baby and monitor the baby throughout the night, and help, things like that. For us, our kids always sleep with us when we're growing up, but just talking in general, what people do here in Latin America. So they'll have a full time nurse for the first, say, 6 months of the baby's birth. And, that's maybe $1,200 a month. And, helps with all of those types of things, especially for new parents. If you're not used to uh, all the intricacies of the umbilical cord, and what do you do with this, and all of these, like, you don't have to figure that out on your own. You can have medical help the entire time. So there's a lot of options there, but it is a huge, like, some people might say, well, that's kind of, that's a lot of money you're spending on these things. But you also have to consider, I don't cook, I don't clean, I don't grocery shop, I don't scrub toilets, I don't do any of these things. I mean, take care of my clients and I goof off and play with my kids. That is my life. I take care of my clients and I play with my kids. I don't do any of the other stuff, so I can work productively for 8, 9 hours a day. And then when I'm done work, I'm done. Like I just go downstairs and just hang out with my children. And, I don't have to do 50 other things. I'm not distracted. I'm not pulled in different ways. I don't have to worry about what's for dinner or anything. I come down and I have a nice food cooked for me. That's healthy. And I'm not eating McDonald's or, all these things that are going to put you in a downward spiral because of, all the chemicals and horrible things. Like we eat organic food. I could go on and on and on about this, but I just think that it is a much better option to live in a country where this is not cost prohibitive, where actually it's very normal. Everybody I know has domestic help in Latin America.
Yeah. So as a dad that has 4 kids and 3 of them are in activities already, the driver would be a huge help because there's days that we're just like going back and forth. I like literally high five my wife as we swap kids and cars, and it's crazy. But yeah, that sounds very appealing. And honestly, as a business owner, you probably are able to focus on your business more because you don't have to worry about, oh, does my wife get enough support to get all the groceries or doing all these other things? And on the other side, you're going to be a better dad because now you're not stressed about, we got to get our kids to this. We're going to have to make a meal. Have you cleaned up your room? All of these things. And so generally you should just make your overall life and business and every part better and focus on the things you like doing versus on the things that you feel obligated to do.
Yeah. I mean, I can be a father and I can be a present father and a present husband and parent my children, not just I don't know. I don't yell at my kids. By the way, I've never had a fight with my wife. In 10 years of marriage, we've never swore at each other. We've never yelled at each other. We've never had anything like that because I get rid of all of this stress. People say, you have 4 children. You must not sleep. Are you joking? I have a whoop. I have 100% sleep scores. I sleep 8.5 hours every single night. And even we have the baby with us. I mean, I still sleep through the night because I've gotten rid of all of these stressful, difficult things. So I focus on my business. I focus on serving my clients at a high level. These are all things that allow me to be a lot more successful because I've gotten rid of all of the time wasting, the anxiety, any of that stuff.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, there's a book called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, and he talks about that. The numbers just work a lot better at a lot of different scales if you're paying that kind of fee versus like if I was going to buy just a house manager or hire a house manager for our family, you're talking $70,000-$80,000 a year. And for what you're priced down there, I mean, you're with 14,000-15,000 is kind of what I was hearing. So for all those things. So it makes a ton of sense. So let's maybe circle back. So now we've talked about the people that want to move countries and invest there. Talk to me about the people that they're perfectly happy staying in Canada, staying in the US, but they want to take advantage of moving money to other countries. What kind of hurdles do they have to go through for that? How do they identify good opportunities? And, there's always a saying of invest in what you know. And I don't know anything about South America really. So how do you, besides just massive amounts of research, how do you get over that hurdle and that fear of investing in something you don't know? And where should you start your search?
Well, I mean, education is extremely important. I mean, we put out a ton of resources for free at expatmoney.com. We're doing 3 times a week blog articles. We have weekly podcasts. We have monthly webinars, but we also do quarterly tours and trips. So as I mentioned before, we just took a group to Paraguay. I'm taking a group to Colombia at the end of this year. We have multiple trips to Panama every year. We got back from the northeast of Brazil about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. So we're taking large groups of people so that they can see the things for themselves. I'm very much a fan of boots on the ground type of research. I think that this is very important. Now, the education, I think even if you don't have an experience with Latin America, you can get your arms around it pretty quick, okay? It's not like you don't have to do your research. You have to do it, but it is within reach, okay? You start reading, you join our newsletter, you'll get the daily updates, things like this. You join a webinar, you come with us on a tour. Within a couple of months, I'll get you up to speed very, very fast on these types of things, which might be not the case if we were to look at, hey, let's go look at investing in China. Like, well, no, that's going to be more than a couple of months. I still don't feel super secure with it. And I've been at it for 20 years over there, So I think that it is possible, but you got to get started, and we'll help you through the process and make it make sense.
As a whole, so I know you mentioned you like to invest in tangible things. So as a whole, do you see more of your investors leaning towards like real estate in other countries, or are they looking like they see a benefit of going into farmland or timber or some of the other, more tangible things that you mentioned?
So we are focused on productive real estate. So we do maybe a tiny bit of like land banking type of things, but call it 2% or 3% or something like that of the portfolios. Almost everything else is productive real estate. So real estate that generates an income, whether that be, as you said, farmland or timberland or condos. We do, short-term rentals. We do beach properties. We have mountain properties. We have city, long-term, mid-term. I mean, we have everything because we're building out a portfolio of assets. Now, the very nice thing is that down here in Latin America, you're often able to get properties that are drastically less expensive than back home. So, for example, I work with a project in the northeast of Brazil, and I even run a small newsletter just about the northeast of Brazil called Brazil Beachfront, brazilbeachfront.com. And we're picking up beach properties there, like front row on the beach in the most beautiful area, 25 to 45 minutes outside of a city of 4 million people. We're picking these up for around 100,000. That's lot plus home. That's brand new build where you open your window and you're looking at the ocean right there. I mean, this is not, squint and see in the distance. I mean, you walking out and your feet are in the sand on the beach. It's amazing for 100 grand. I mean, try to tell me, anywhere in the US where you're going to have 25 minutes outside of a city of 4 million people where you're going to be able to afford beachfront. I mean, it's just not going to happen, right? Or in Paraguay, we're buying condos for, 70 grand, 80 grand, something like that, brand new construction next to a university that you can rent out and make, 8, 9, 10% cash on cash return plus 5 to 10% capital appreciation plus during the build cycle you're looking at probably 30 to 50% capital appreciation. So I mean, we're getting nice solid teens returns on these properties in year one, and you know it's a titled property. This is not leasehold. This is not a 99-year lease. It's freehold. You own the property outright. Property taxes are very low. You're going to spend like hardly anything to keep the property active, and property management on site, so you don't have to deal with the tenants, the termites, or the toilets. I mean, the three T's, right? So there's just so many opportunities where people are not priced out, because a lot of people are priced out back home. Like, you need to take out this expensive mortgage and financing and 10% down, and then you need to rehab it, and you're taking all these risks. It's like, this is not the way down here. Mostly a cash economy, and if you can put together a little bit of money, you can get a new property and get it up and running ASAP.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so I dove down a rabbit hole a few months ago just for fun, right? What would happen if we sold our house and moved to Costa Rica? I was not really intending to do it. Just wanted to see what it would look like. And the amount of house I could get with just the value equity I have in my current house was crazy. And then, the brakes get pumped on, well, then I got to pull our kids out of school, or not school, out of like baseball and all this other stuff, right? So there's always those logistics. But I was just astonished by the price of real estate. And I was specifically only looking at Costa Rica, right? I didn't even go
Costa Rica's
further south.
expensive. I mean,
So
Costa Rica is probably the most expensive country in all of Latin America, I would say. I wouldn't say it's the best, but I'd say it is definitely the most expensive. Um, so I mean, there are places where you'd have half of Costa Rica or one quarter of Costa Rica and still have it very beautiful and amazing infrastructure. As for the baseball, yeah, I mean, there are activities that are the same as back home, but there are also a ton of activities that you don't play back home, but are still amazing and fun and excellent for the children. I mean, if people are looking at this, I will say that it is much easier while the kids are, 12 and below or 13 and below, opposed to, 16 or something like that, and they've now halfway through high school. I think that can get a little bit more challenging. Not that we haven't done it, not that we haven't helped people. We absolutely have, but it's something that should probably be looked at as either the kids are much younger or the kids are out of the house.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I think what your system offers and where I got to with Costa Rica was like, didn't know anybody that had done it. There was just like this big like black box of uncertainty there. And so when an uncertain mind doesn't make a decision and backs up,
100%.
and so someone that's in your group, and listen to your podcast would have access to those resources. So if they're actually interested in making that move, they would be able to get those questions answered that I immediately ran into. And since I wasn't really looking to do that, that was the stopping point. Like, you come up with all these objections of why it wouldn't work and you back away.
Yep. I mean, we have a huge community of people. So, quick example, I had a French client who was coming to town, and the wife was a little bit concerned that if she moved to Panama, she wouldn't know anybody. So I sent out a quick email just to the paying clients, not even the general subscribers, not the larger audience, just our paying clients who are part of our membership or our private clients. And I think we had 32 people or 34 people show up for, I called the event Jazz Pizza and Freedom Night or something like that. We went to a jazz club and they did gluten-free pizza there. And we had like 34 people show up on a Wednesday night. And so everybody could meet up and get to know each other and things like that. So you have built-in friends immediately in our community, which there's a lot to be said for that.
There sure is. As somebody that moved across the country 8 years ago with my family, that would have been a huge benefit. So if somebody is interested in learning more about Expat Money, where can they go to listen to the podcast, learn about you, and maybe reach out if they're interested in exploring this idea further?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the main place is expatmoney.com. You're going to find everything on there. I would encourage you to sign up for the newsletter. Everything goes out on the newsletter, the podcast, the webinars, the trips, the tours. We have a very large email newsletter and it's a lot of fun. Certainly not a stuffy newsletter by any means. We have a lot of fun with it and people really like it. So expatmoney.com. And then for the podcast, wherever you're listening to us today, I think you probably just search Expat Money or Expat Money Show and we should pop up. We've been going for almost 10 years now at this point. So pretty fleshed out show, lots of back content to go through, lots of big name guests that you would know and lots of guests that you would never hear of because they're the lawyers and the accountants and the property developers and everybody that I work with every day in my work.
Awesome. And I will make sure all of those links are in the show notes so anybody can quickly and easily access them. I say if you have any interest at all in this topic, I would reach out, get the newsletter. I might sign up for the newsletter as well, just because it's an interesting topic for me. But anything you would like to leave us with today as we wrap up the podcast?
No, great episode. I'm very happy to help your audience. Anybody who needs anything, just reach out to us at expatmoney.com. We're here to assist. We got a very large team and we're quite good and responsible about getting back to people. So just let us know and we're here. And Loren, thanks very much for the opportunity. Great episode. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time, Mikkel. And thank you, Brick by Brick audience. We will see you again next time. Thanks for tuning in to Brick by Brick Wealth Building Conversations. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more people find the show. For more tips, resources, and updates on my journey, follow me on Invest with Loren. Let's keep building wealth, one brick at a time. See you next week.